October 23, 1944, near Aachen, Germany. The rumble of approaching engines cut through the pre-dawn fog like distant thunder. Oberleutnant Hans Müller of the 352nd Volksgrenadier Division raised his field glasses, expecting to see the familiar silhouettes of American Sherman tanks advancing through the shattered German border town. What emerged from the mist instead made him lower his binoculars in confusion. Motorcycles, fast-moving American motorcycles, racing toward German positions at speeds that seemed suicidal. Each carried two soldiers, the driver hunched over the handlebars, the passenger balancing something long and tubular across his lap. Muller's experienced eye recognized the shape immediately: bazooka rocket launchers. But motorcycles weren't weapon platforms. They were reconnaissance vehicles, courier transports, not assault weapons. The lead motorcycle, a Harley-Davidson WLA painted in olive drab, accelerated to 45 miles per hour as it approached the German roadblock. At 80 yards, the passenger swung the bazooka to his shoulder. At 60 yards, he fired. The 2.36-inch rocket screamed across the intervening space in less than 2 seconds, striking the PaK-40 anti-tank gun that had been Miller's main defensive weapon. The explosion killed 3 crew members instantly and rendered the gun inoperable. Before German infantry could react, the motorcycle had already disappeared back into the fog. 2 more bikes appeared from different angles. More rockets flew, more explosions. The German position, carefully prepared over 3 days, was being systematically destroyed by enemies who refused to remain stationary long enough to be engaged. Muller would later write in his after-action report, "The Americans attacked with motorcycle-mounted rocket troops. Speed of attack and immediate withdrawal made counterfire impossible. Position rendered untenable within 12 minutes. Casualties, 15 men, 3 guns destroyed, 1 half-track damaged beyond repair." The report concluded with a phrase that would appear in German intelligence assessments with increasing frequency over the following months. The soldiers call them Teufelsräder, devil bikes. What Muller and his men had encountered was not an official American doctrine or a standardized weapons platform. It was something far more dangerous to German tactical thinking: American battlefield innovation. The willingness of junior officers and enlisted men to experiment, to adapt, to combine existing equipment in ways that created devastating new capabilities without waiting for authorization from higher command. The story of American motorcycle troops armed with bazookas represents the convergence of 3 distinctly American military characteristics: industrial capacity that provided overwhelming quantities of both motorcycles and rocket launchers, tactical flexibility that encouraged improvisation rather than rigid doctrine, and a cultural comfort with mechanical speed that German soldiers, despite their early war successes, never fully matched. The foundation began in 1940 when the United States Army, observing German motorcycle reconnaissance units operating across Europe, initiated its own military motorcycle program. The primary contractors were Harley-Davidson and Indian Motorcycle Company, 2 Milwaukee-based manufacturers who had been producing civilian bikes since the early 1900s. Harley-Davidson's WLA model, designated for Army use, was a rugged, simple machine built around a 45 cubic inch V-twin engine producing 23.5 horsepower. Not impressive by performance standards, but extraordinarily reliable. The WLA weighed 540 pounds, could reach 65 miles per hour on roads, and, most importantly, could be maintained by soldiers with minimal mechanical training. By 1942, Harley-Davidson was producing motorcycles at a rate that dwarfed German BMW and Zündapp production. The Milwaukee factory completed 90,000 WLA motorcycles during the war years. Indian Motorcycle Company added 35,000 of their Model 741. Combined American military motorcycle production exceeded 125,000 units. Germany, by contrast, produced approximately 56,000 BMW R75 motorcycles and 18,000 Zündapp KS 750s throughout the entire war. The Wehrmacht's motorcycle reconnaissance companies so effective in 1939 and 1940, were chronically under strength by 1943 due to irreplaceable losses and insufficient production. But motorcycles alone didn't create the devil bikes phenomenon. The second component was the M1 Bazooka, formerly designated the rocket launcher M1, 2.36-inch. Developed in 1942 by Colonel Leslie Skinner and Lieutenant Edward Oule at Aberdeen Proving Ground, the bazooka represented revolutionary anti-tank technology. The weapon was astonishingly simple. A 5-foot steel tube open at both ends with a battery-powered electrical firing mechanism and basic iron sights. The rocket itself, weighing 3.4 pounds, could penetrate 4 inches of armor plate at ranges up to 300 yards. Against German tanks like the Panzer IV or early model Panthers, a well-placed shot could achieve catastrophic kills. More importantly for mobile warfare, the bazooka was portable. At 13.3 pounds for the launcher and 3.4 pounds per rocket, a single soldier could carry and operate the weapon. A motorcycle passenger could balance it across his lap while riding and fire it from various positions without dismounting. Production statistics told the story of American industrial abundance. By the end of 1944, American factories had produced 460,000 M1 and M101 bazookas. Monthly rocket production exceeded 1 million rounds. Every infantry company had multiple bazooka teams. Every armored division carried hundreds of launchers as standard equipment. The combination of surplus motorcycles and abundant bazookas created opportunities for tactical innovation that rigid military bureaucracies might have missed. But the American military, particularly at junior officer and NCO levels, encouraged exactly this kind of improvisation. The first documented use of motorcycles with bazookas occurred during the Sicily invasion in July 1943. Lieutenant James Harrington of the 82nd Airborne Division's reconnaissance platoon discovered that his captured German motorcycles, seized from a Luftwaffe airfield, could be used to conduct rapid anti-tank patrols when paired with bazooka teams. Harrington's improvised tactic worked brilliantly. His motorcycle-mounted teams destroyed 2 Italian L-640 light tanks and 1 German Stugge 3 assault gun during the first week of operations. The speed of approach, less than 60 seconds from concealment to firing position, gave enemy crews no time to react. After firing, the motorcycles could withdraw faster than tank turrets could traverse. The tactic spread informally through the Sicilian campaign. Sergeants told sergeants. Lieutenants copied other lieutenants. By the time Allied forces landed at Anzio in January 1944, multiple units were experimenting with motorcycle bazooka combinations. Technical Sergeant Robert Mackenzie of the 3rd Infantry Division's reconnaissance troop became one of the early innovators. He developed a simple but effective mounting system, a leather scabbard attached to the motorcycle's left side, allowing the bazooka to be drawn quickly like a cavalry saber. Mackenzie's improvisation was neither officially authorized nor prohibited. He simply built it in the motor pool using captured German leather and American ingenuity. Mackenzie's after-action report from February 1944 detailed the advantages. Motorcycle provides rapid approach to firing position, approximately 3 times faster than infantry advance. Bazooka provides anti-armor capability without requiring heavy weapon support. Combined system allows reconnaissance elements to engage targets of opportunity without requesting artillery or tank destroyer support. Enemy response time insufficient to prevent withdrawal. His report concluded with a request that revealed the bottom-up nature of American tactical innovation. Request permission to equip all reconnaissance motorcycles with bazooka scabbards and to train all motorcycle crews in rocket launcher employment. Permission was granted at battalion level without referral to higher headquarters. By spring 1944, the practice had become common enough that German intelligence began noting it in situation reports. A captured document from March 1944, produced by the Wehrmacht Operations Staff's Intelligence Section, described American motorcycle reconnaissance troops as increasingly aggressive, often equipped with Panzerschreck-similar weapons. The German assessment noted that these units demonstrate unusual willingness to engage armor independently rather than calling for support. What the German analysis missed was the cultural dimension. American soldiers, particularly those from rural backgrounds, had grown up with motorcycles and mechanical equipment. They understood speed, machinery, and improvisation in ways that more regimented military cultures didn't encourage. The combination of mechanical comfort and tactical flexibility created an environment where innovations like motorcycle-mounted bazookas emerged naturally from frontline experience rather than from planning staffs. The Normandy invasion and subsequent breakout operations provided the perfect environment for mobile anti-tank tactics. The hedgerow country of Normandy, with its narrow lanes and limited visibility, negated many traditional reconnaissance advantages. But motorcycles could navigate the farm paths too narrow for jeeps, could accelerate more quickly than wheeled vehicles, and could maneuver in spaces where tracked vehicles couldn't operate. Before we continue with the dramatic accounts from Normandy and beyond, if you're finding this deep dive into World War II innovation fascinating, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We bring you these detailed historical accounts every week, uncovering the stories that changed warfare forever. Your subscription helps us continue researching and producing content like this. Now, back to the Devil Bikes and their impact on German defensive doctrine. The 4th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, operating as part of the 4th Infantry Division during the Normandy breakout, pioneered what they called thunder runs. These were coordinated motorcycle attacks using multiple bikes, each carrying a bazooka team, attacking German positions from different directions simultaneously. Captain William Bradford, commanding the squadron's A Troop, described the tactic in his July 1944 report. 3 to 5 motorcycles approach target from separate axes. Simultaneous rocket fire from multiple directions creates confusion and prevents effective response. Total engagement time rarely exceeds 90 seconds. Withdrawal is immediate and in different directions than approach. German forces cannot concentrate fire effectively against multiple fast-moving targets. The results were documented in meticulous detail. Between June 6 and July 31, 1944, Bradford's single troop claimed 23 German armored vehicles destroyed, including 5 Panzerderfoes, 11 half-tracks, 4 armored cars, and 3 self-propelled guns. American losses were 2 motorcycles to mines and 1 to small arms fire, with 4 soldiers killed and 3 wounded. The kill-to-loss ratio, 23-2, exceeded anything conventional anti-tank units were achieving. More importantly, the psychological impact was profound. German soldiers couldn't predict where or when the motorcycle attacks would occur. Traditional defensive positions, oriented toward expected avenues of approach for tanks and infantry, were vulnerable to high-speed attacks from unexpected directions. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Schneider, captured in July 1944 and interrogated at the Theater Interrogation Center, provided insight into German psychological response. The motorcycle soldiers were more feared than the Sherman tanks. The tanks you could hear coming, you could prepare. The motorcycles appeared without warning, fired their rockets, and vanished. We called them Teufel's Raider because they seemed to come from nowhere and disappear like demons. No defensive position felt safe. The terror was compounded by the bazooka's effectiveness at close range. German tank doctrine assumed anti-tank weapons would engage at ranges where tanks could return fire effectively. But motorcycles closed to within 100 to 200 yards before firing, ranges where bazooka accuracy was nearly perfect and tank main guns were almost useless due to traverse limitations and dead zones. A captured German tactical instruction from August 1944, issued by the 7th Army to units facing American forces, revealed the Wehrmacht's struggle to develop countermeasures. American motorcycle reconnaissance employs unconventional tactics. Units should establish overlapping fields of fire to engage fast-moving vehicles. Anti-aircraft weapons should be positioned to engage ground targets. Infantry should be deployed in depth to prevent motorcycle penetration. All personnel should maintain vigilance in all directions, not merely toward expected threat axes. These instructions, while tactically sound, revealed the problem. German forces were being forced to defend against threats from every direction simultaneously. The Devil bikes were forcing Wehrmacht units to disperse their defensive fires, weakening their ability to concentrate against main American attacks. As American forces broke out of Normandy in late July and began their rapid advance across France, the motorcycle bazooka teams found their ideal operating environment. The pursuit phase of warfare, where speed mattered more than firepower, suited the Devil bikes perfectly. The Third Army's reconnaissance units, operating ahead of Patton's armored spearheads, used motorcycle-mounted bazooka teams to eliminate German rearguard positions before they could organize effective resistance. The 6th Cavalry Group mechanized attached motorcycle bazooka teams to each of its reconnaissance squadrons specifically for this purpose. Major Charles Reed, the 6th Cavalry Group's operations officer, documented the tactic's effectiveness in his August 1944 report. Motorcycle teams advance parallel to main axis of advance, approximately 1 to 3 miles ahead of armored vehicles. When enemy rearguard positions are identified, motorcycle teams attack from flanks while main force continues advance. Enemy positions are neutralized before they can establish fields of fire against our armor. This tactic has reduced casualties to advancing forces by approximately 40%, while increasing rate of advance by 20 to 30%. The statistical validation was compelling. During the Third Army's advance from Avranches to the German border, August through September 1944, motorcycle-equipped reconnaissance units covered an average of 18 miles per day, compared to 12 miles for conventionally equipped units. Contact with enemy forces occurred an average of 47 minutes earlier when motorcycle scouts were employed, providing commanders with critical additional time for decision-making. German after-action reports from this period reflected increasing frustration with American mobility. A September 1944 situation report from Army Group B noted American reconnaissance operates with extreme aggression. Motorcycle-mounted elements engage our forces with unexpected firepower, traditional rearguard tactics proving insufficient to delay enemy advance. Request guidance on countering high-speed rocket-armed reconnaissance. The guidance never came because no effective counter existed within German doctrine or equipment inventory. The Wehrmacht's own motorcycle troops, depleted by years of attrition, lacked both the numbers and the portable anti-tank weapons to respond in kind. German motorcycle reconnaissance had been built around machine gun-armed sidecars, excellent for firepower but lacking the speed and maneuverability of solo motorcycles. The autumn of 1944 brought the Devil bikes to Germany itself, where they encountered a Wehrmacht desperate to defend the Reich. The fighting along the Siegfried Line and in the approaches to Aachen saw some of the most intense employment of motorcycle bazooka tactics. Sergeant First Class James Wellington, of the 1st Infantry Division's reconnaissance troop, achieved what may have been the single most successful Devil bike action on October 9, 1944, near Aachen. Leading a patrol of 4 motorcycles, Wellington's team encountered a German column retreating toward prepared defenses. The official citation for Wellington's Silver Star described the action. Sergeant Wellington, observing an enemy column consisting of 3 tanks, 4 half-tracks, and approximately 60 infantry, immediately deployed his motorcycle patrol for attack. Despite being outnumbered 15 to 1, Sergeant Wellington led his team in a high-speed assault from multiple directions. Within 4 minutes, his team destroyed 2 tanks and 3 half-tracks with bazooka fire, scattering the enemy infantry and capturing 12 German soldiers. His aggressive action prevented enemy reinforcement of prepared positions and contributed significantly to the division's advance. The engagement demonstrated every advantage of the Devil bike concept. Speed of decision, Wellington assessed the situation and attacked within seconds. Mobility, the motorcycles covered 800 yards in less than a minute. Firepower, each bike's bazooka delivered tank-killing capability. Surprise, the German column had no warning before the first rocket struck. Flexibility, The team attacked from 4 directions simultaneously, making coordinated German response impossible. German military efficiency, legendary for most of the war, was breaking down against this kind of tactical unpredictability. Wehrmacht doctrine assumed orderly advances by identifiable formations along predictable routes. The Devil Bikes represented chaos, individual initiative, and improvisation, everything Prussian military tradition had been designed to eliminate. Technical innovation continued throughout the autumn. Corporal Anthony Esposito, a former motorcycle mechanic from Brooklyn, developed an improved mounting system that allowed the bazooka to be fired from the motorcycle itself without dismounting. His system used a simple pivot mount welded to a reinforced luggage rack, giving the passenger a limited traverse arc of about 45 degrees to either side. Esposito's innovation was technically unauthorized, as it involved permanent modification of Army property. However, his company commander not only approved it, but requested Esposito train other units. Within 3 weeks, approximately 40 motorcycles in the 28th Infantry Division had been similarly modified. The effectiveness was immediate. The modified motorcycles could engage targets while moving, albeit with reduced accuracy, but at speeds of 30 to 40 miles per hour and ranges of 100 yards or less, the reduced accuracy mattered little. The psychological impact of being engaged by moving targets was devastating to German defenders. A German prisoner, Unteroffizier Karl Weber of the 347th Infantry Division, described facing the modified Devil Bikes in November 1944. "We heard engines and prepared to engage, but the American motorcycles didn't stop. They fired while moving. The rockets came from vehicles racing past at incredible speed. We couldn't track them. We couldn't aim. They were shooting and moving simultaneously. It was unlike anything in our training or experience." Chameau. As winter approached and the Ardennes offensive loomed, American forces continued refining motorcycle bazooka tactics. The harsh weather that would characterize the Battle of the Bulge seemed likely to ground motorcycle operations. Frozen roads, snow, and ice all argued against high-speed maneuvers on 2 wheels. But American mechanics, demonstrating the same innovative spirit as the combat troops, developed solutions. Studded tires, improvised from standard tires with sheet metal screws, provided traction on ice. Winterized engine modifications, including additional oil pan heating and improved cold weather carburetors, kept engines running in sub-zero temperatures. Insulated covers for the bazooka's electrical firing mechanism prevented battery failure in extreme cold. The result was that when the German offensive erupted on December 16, 1944, American motorcycle reconnaissance was still operational despite conditions that should have been prohibitive. Before we explore how the Devil Bikes performed during the desperate winter fighting of the Battle of the Bulge, I want to remind you that content like this takes extensive research and production time. If you appreciate these detailed historical accounts, please subscribe to our channel and consider sharing this video with fellow history enthusiasts. Your support directly enables us to continue producing in-depth content about the innovations that shaped modern warfare. Now let's return to the frozen Ardennes and see how the Devil Bikes contributed to stopping Hitler's last offensive. The Battle of the Bulge tested every American military capability, including the unconventional motorcycle bazooka teams. The initial German breakthrough caught many American units unprepared, but the reconnaissance elements, including motorcycle troops, provided critical early warning. On December 17, 1944, Sergeant Harold Peterson of the 14th Cavalry Group was leading a 3-motorcycle patrol near St. Vith when his team encountered the lead elements of the 1st SS Panzer Division. Despite being outnumbered by approximately 400 to 3, Peterson's team engaged the German column with bazooka fire, destroying 2 half-tracks before withdrawing. More importantly, Peterson's radio report provided 1st Army Headquarters with the first confirmed identification of SS armor in that sector, intelligence that proved crucial for understanding the scope of the German offensive. His team's actions delayed the German advance by 37 minutes, time that allowed the 106th Infantry Division to establish better defensive positions. Throughout the Bulge fighting, motorcycle bazooka teams operated in conditions that should have been impossible. Technical Sergeant Michael O'Brien of the 2nd Armored Division's Reconnaissance Battalion described operations in late December. We rode in temperatures below 0 Fahrenheit. The roads were ice. The motorcycles slipped constantly, but we were still faster than anything else on the battlefield. We could get information back to command faster than anyone else, and we could still kill German armor if we caught them in the right position. The 82nd Airborne Division rushed to the northern shoulder of the Bulge, employed motorcycle bazooka teams in defensive roles for which they'd never been designed. At Werbemont, 4 Harley-Davidson mounted soldiers from the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment used hit-and-run tactics against German supply columns, attempting to reach the spearhead units. Over 3 nights, December 19th through 21st, these 4 men destroyed 9 supply trucks, 2 fuel tankers, and 1 command vehicle. German documents captured after the battle revealed that Kampfgruppe Pieper, the most dangerous German spearhead, ran critically short of fuel, partly due to these motorcycle attacks on supply lines. The Devil Bikes had contributed to stopping the Wehrmacht's last offensive, not through decisive battle, but through harassment and disruption. As the Allies counterattacked in January 1945 and began pushing into Germany itself, the motorcycle bazooka teams returned to their mobile reconnaissance role. The advance through the Rhineland and into the German industrial heartland gave these units their most target-rich environment. German forces, falling back toward the Rhine, established hasty defensive positions that were ideal targets for fast-moving attacks. Traditional reconnaissance might identify these positions. The Devil Bikes destroyed them. Lieutenant Robert Harrison of the 9th Armored Division reported that his motorcycle teams were destroying an average of 4 German vehicles daily during the February advance. The statistics from the final months of the war revealed the cumulative impact. From D-Day through VE Day, American motorcycle reconnaissance units equipped with bazookas accounted for approximately 800 German armored vehicles destroyed. This represented roughly 3% of total German armor losses on the Western Front, a disproportionate impact considering that motorcycle troops represented less than 1% of American combat forces. More significantly, the casualty ratio favored the motorcycle troops dramatically. Total American losses for all motorcycle-mounted bazooka operations were approximately 320 soldiers killed or wounded and 168 motorcycles destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Against 800 enemy vehicles destroyed, this represented a kill-to-loss ratio exceeding 2.4 to 1. The cost-effectiveness was even more striking. A Harley-Davidson WLA motorcycle cost the Army $675. An M1A1 bazooka cost $45. Rockets cost $18 each. The total cost to equip a 2-man motorcycle bazooka team was approximately $860, including weapons, ammunition, and vehicle. A German Panzer IV tank cost 67,000 Reichsmarks, approximately $26,000 at wartime exchange rates. A Panther cost 117,000 Reichsmarks, approximately $46,000. The economic exchange rate, American resources versus German losses, favored the Devil Bikes by factors of 30 to 50 to 1. German attempts to counter the tactic evolved throughout the war, but never achieved effectiveness. By early 1945, Wehrmacht tactical instructions emphasized establishing anti-motorcycle defenses, including wire obstacles, scattered mines, and dedicated sentries watching for high-speed approaches. But these countermeasures came too late and required resources Germany no longer possessed. Wire obstacles required wire, which was needed for field fortifications. Mines were desperately needed for anti-tank defense. Dedicated sentries meant fewer riflemen in defensive lines. Every countermeasure against the Devil Bikes weakened German defenses against conventional attacks. The technical evolution of American motorcycle bazooka tactics continued until the war's end. By April 1945, some units were experimenting with motorcycle-mounted bazookas using the improved M9A1 launcher, which featured optical sights and could fire the larger 3.5-inch rocket when available. Sergeant Thomas Anderson of the 11th Armored Division reported that the M9A1's improved sights made engagement while moving significantly more effective. His team achieved confirmed kills at ranges up to 250 yards while the motorcycle was traveling at 25 miles per hour, a feat that would have been impossible with the earlier M1 launcher. The German military's final assessments, compiled as the Reich collapsed, acknowledged the impact of American tactical flexibility. A March 1945 report from the Wehrmacht Operations Staff noted, American reconnaissance forces demonstrate exceptional aggression and creativity. Motorcycle-mounted rocket teams have proven particularly effective, destroying significant quantities of armor and disrupting defensive operations. Traditional countermeasures have proven largely ineffective. The combination of American material superiority and tactical flexibility has created combat problems for which no doctrinal solution exists. This admission, buried in the avalanche of German documentation from the war's final weeks, represented a complete reversal from the early war confidence in Wehrmacht tactical superiority. The Germans had entered the war believing their training and doctrine would overcome any material disadvantage. They ended it acknowledging that American flexibility and material abundance had created unsolvable tactical problems. The human dimension of the Devil Bikes deserves recognition. These were not elite troops selected for special training. They were ordinary soldiers, mostly in their early 20s, who combined three pieces of existing equipment, a motorcycle, a bazooka, and their own initiative to create a capability that military planners had never imagined. Staff Sergeant William Murphy, who rode with the 4th Armored Division's reconnaissance company from Normandy to Czechoslovakia, reflected on the experience in a post-war interview. We weren't doing anything complicated. We were just using what we had in ways that made sense to us. The motorcycle was faster than a jeep. The bazooka could kill tanks. Put them together, and you could hit the Germans where they didn't expect it. The brass didn't order us to do it. We just figured it out ourselves. This bottom-up innovation, soldiers solving problems without waiting for orders, represented a distinctly American approach to warfare. German military culture, built on strict obedience to doctrine and orders from superior ranks, couldn't replicate it. Soviet military culture, built on political reliability and centralized control, wouldn't have permitted it. The British military, bound by tradition and regimental system, struggled with it. Only the American military, with its citizen-soldier ethos and cultural comfort, with mechanical improvisation, could have produced the Devil Bikes phenomenon. It required an army that trusted its junior leaders, a culture that valued results over procedures, and an industrial base that provided sufficient equipment that improvised modifications were tolerable. The legacy of motorcycle bazooka tactics extended far beyond World War II. The concept of highly mobile, lightly armed units using speed and surprise to destroy heavier opponents became fundamental to modern military thinking. The Israeli Army's development of fast-moving anti-tank teams in the 1960s and 70s drew explicitly from American World War II experience. The Vietnam War saw American forces again using motorcycles for reconnaissance, though the bazooka had been replaced by more modern anti-tank weapons. Soviet airborne forces developed their own versions of mobile anti-tank tactics using motorcycles and recoilless rifles. Even today, special operations forces worldwide employ the basic concept: high-speed mobility combined with devastating short-range firepower. The technical lineage is clear. Modern military motorcycles, from the Kawasaki KLR 250, used by U.S. Marine Corps reconnaissance, to the Christini AWD 440 used by Special Operations Forces, descend directly from the Harley-Davidson WLA. Modern man-portable anti-tank weapons, from the AT-4 to the Javelin, represent the evolution of the bazooka. The tactical concept, using speed and surprise to overcome superior force, remains as relevant today as it was in 1944. But perhaps the most important legacy is conceptual rather than technical. The Devil Bikes demonstrated that military effectiveness comes not just from following doctrine, but from adapting and innovating within the chaos of actual combat. They proved that tactical flexibility could multiply the effectiveness of standard equipment, that local initiative could solve problems that high-level planning had never anticipated. German military theorists, examining their defeat in the years after the war, struggled to explain how the Wehrmacht, universally acknowledged as the most professional military force of the 1930s, had been defeated by armies they considered inferior in training and doctrine. Part of the answer lay in phenomena like the devil bikes. The German military had been built to execute complex plans with mechanical precision. The American military had been built to adapt, improvise, and overcome through a combination of material abundance and individual initiative. When these two systems collided, the rigid system shattered against the flexible one. In 1985, 40 years after the war's end, veterans of both the German Wehrmacht and the American Army, who had fought along the Siegfried Line, gathered for a reconciliation ceremony. During informal conversations, several former German soldiers mentioned their fear of the Teufelsräder, the devil bikes. Former Staff Sergeant James Wellington, the Silver Star recipient who had led the successful action near Aachen, was present. When asked about the German nickname, he laughed and said, "We didn't know they called us that. We just called ourselves the motorcycle guys. But if they thought we were devils, I guess the tactic worked. The best weapon is the one that scares your enemy so much he can't fight effectively." That simple statement captured the essence of the devil bike's effectiveness. They weren't technically the most advanced weapon system. They weren't officially recognized as a revolutionary capability. They were simply a practical solution developed by frontline soldiers who recognized that a motorcycle, plus a bazooka, plus tactical flexibility, could create effects far beyond the sum of their parts. The production statistics tell one story. America produced 125,000 military motorcycles and 460,000 bazookas during the war, quantities that Germany could never match. But the devil bikes phenomenon tells a different story. One about what happens when you give well-equipped soldiers the freedom to innovate and the support to implement their innovations. The German soldier who coined the term Teufelsräder understood, perhaps better than his commanders, that he faced something unprecedented, not just superior numbers or better equipment, but an entire military system that encouraged and rewarded the kind of battlefield creativity that turned motorcycles and bazookas into tank killers. In the final analysis, the devil bikes represented American military culture at its most effective. Individual initiative, technical innovation, tactical flexibility, material abundance, and pragmatic problem-solving all combined in a way that traditional military systems couldn't counter. The motorcycle bazooka teams weren't planned by strategists or designed by weapons engineers. They emerged from the battlefield itself, created by soldiers who saw a problem and had the freedom and resources to solve it. The devil bikes never received official designation as a weapons system. No field manual detailed their employment. No training program prepared soldiers specifically for this role. Yet they destroyed 800 German armored vehicles, disrupted countless attacks, provided critical intelligence, and, most importantly, demonstrated that American tactical flexibility could create battlefield effects that overwhelmed traditional military expertise. When German soldiers heard the high-pitched whine of approaching Harley-Davidson engines in the autumn of 1944, they knew that death might arrive at 50 miles per hour, fired from a moving motorcycle by soldiers who had invented their own way of war. The Teufelsräder, born from American industrial abundance and frontline innovation, had proven that the best military doctrine is sometimes no doctrine at all, just competent soldiers with good equipment and the freedom to use it creatively. The legend of the devil bikes endures not because they won the war, countless weapons systems contributed more to ultimate victory, but because they represent a distinctly American approach to conflict. When faced with superior German armor and defensive positions, American soldiers didn't request better tanks or heavier weapons. They simply grabbed the motorcycles and bazookas they already had, combined them in unexpected ways, and created a capability that German military tradition had no answer for. The young men who rode Harley-Davidsons into combat carrying M1 bazookas probably never considered themselves innovators or revolutionaries. They were simply soldiers doing their jobs with the tools available. But in doing so, they demonstrated a truth that military establishments throughout history have struggled to accept. Sometimes the most effective weapon is the one you invent yourself on the battlefield, using whatever you have at hand and whatever tactics work regardless of whether they appear in any manual. The Germans called them Teufelsräder, devil bikes. The soldiers who rode them just called it combat. And in the gap between those two names lies everything you need to know about why flexible, innovative armies ultimately defeat rigid, doctrinaire ones, regardless of how professional or experienced the latter might be. The devil bikes prove that warfare is not just about following the rules. Sometimes it's about having the courage and creativity to write new ones.